Do you like talking about Star Wars Destiny? Then join the Jackalmen Games Discord. Hit the link below and join today. What's up, guys? This is Ray
And Ashton
from Jackalmen Games, and today we are going to do another Let's Talk episode. But this one, I'm a little proud to announce that Ashton took a deck that he's been really high on, and he did quite well at a store championship. So the deck that we're talking about is Talzin Super Commando, also known as Taco. And I'm going to be kind of just doing a small interview with Ashton. He had a really, really good run at a store championship, and I'll have him go into a little bit more detail about like the location and some of his matchups. But we also together want to just take a look at the deck and kind of just dive deeper into, you know, the decisions he made with the card choices and, you know, how they benefited him as he went through the store championship. So, Ashton, how are you doing tonight?
Good, man. I know that we're putting this video out a little later than we wanted to, but I still think it's really relevant. Not so much about the placement, but just about this deck in general. And I'm really excited to talk about it. It's super fun. It's got a lot of potential. There's a bunch of different builds. And I'm really excited to talk about this particular pairing and also the card choices here. So I'm doing pretty good, man. Super excited.
Yeah. So this was, like Ashton was saying, this was something we wanted to do kind of just directly after the store championship that he went to. So this deck list, obviously inspired by Jordan, who took this to Gen Con and was runner-up. We did make some tweaks. You know, Ashton was really high on this deck, kind of like immediately after Gen Con, and saw the potential there. And then we did a lot of playtesting, you know, and really put this deck through the paces. And I'm excited to see that he had such, you know, good success with it. So why don't you tell us about some of your matchups and where the store championship was held?
So the store championship was held in Maitland, or actually Waterford, excuse me, at Cool Stuff Games in Orlando. And that is the hometown of Andrew Cox. And we did a Let's Talk with Andrew Cox, which was the North American champion. And he was the first place winner of the store championship, and I placed second. So not a bad person to lose to. So at least if I went second, at least, you know, I lost to the North American champion. But he's a really cool guy, and that's the locals that he attends, and that's kind of like my second home. My main locals is in Mount Dora, but that's where the store championship was held. This was my third store championship. The first was in Mount Dora. The second was up in Jacksonville with those guys there. And then the third was this one here, which I took a little bit more serious. I wanted to play test some more with this deck. And this is the deck that I was pretty excited about, because actually it's funny that I played Andrew Cox, because in the store championship in Mount Dora, there at Breakpoint Games, Andrew, I heard him over talk. I actually heard him. I was kind of eavesdropping a little bit, so yeah, that's not creepy. But I was listening to him talk to somebody about the Van Bracers, and he was like, you know, the Mandalorian Van Bracers are awesome, because now with the Super Commando, you can use the trigger with that, and then you can bounce it back to your hand, and then you can even play it on another one, and you know, there's just this fun little synergy there behind that, and it has no blank sides, and every side is something that you can use. And you know, I was just kind of hearing him talking, and we were talking later on, but we were talking more about X-Wing when me and him were talking later in the day. But I went home thinking about that, and I was like, you know, Talzin can be paired with Commando, and Talzin's always solid, and this could really be a good character pairing, and it's 3 wide, 27 health. I mean, this is huge, right? And I was thinking about it more and more. We started doing some play testing, and then lo and behold, you see it there on Gen Con, and Andrew's playing against it, which is kind of funny. And I was like, you know, I'm going to work on more of this. I'm going to bring it to the store championship. Right? Why not, right? So the deck's solid. It's got health. It's a deck that you can slow play and really wait for your opponent to do their combos, and wait for your opponent to do their actions and resolve their damage, and then you do things in response to that, or you slowly just, you know, cut them away with little bits of damage here and there. So I mean, this is why I chose to play this, and this is the place that I tested it out at, which was in Waterford at Cool Stuff in Orlando. So how about a long-winded answer there, right?
Yeah, no, it's fine. You are part of the Jackalmen Games, so you know, talking kind of goes along with it. So for those who aren't aware, anyone who's listening like on iTunes or Google Play, the Mandalorian Super Commando is a non-unique character. It's yellow villain, 9 health, play cost is 9. The die sides are 1 ranged, 2 ranged, 1 melee, 1 shield, and a blank. So no resources. So we'll get into a little bit later, how you kind of adapted through that.
Mm-hmm.
And then what makes the Super Commandos so interesting is their power action.
Right.
So it's power action, play an equipment or weapon from your hand on this character and deal 1 damage to a character. So the thing that is most evident about the deck is, with 3 characters being very prevalent in today's meta, and usually when you see 3 character decks, you have a spike in health with 1 or 2 characters, and then the other character, just due to point restrictions, is usually, weaker when it comes to health. But the thing I do like about this deck, and I think that Ashton, speaks about and is highly in favor of, is the fact that each character has an even amount of health, all being at 9. So it makes every character that you have a real obstacle for your opponent to get through. And that's something that when Ashton was playing this and we were doing a lot of play testing, that's something that I became apparent of that. Chewing through one of these characters, if you identify that Mother Talzin is the biggest threat, playing against this deck, just chewing through Mother Talzin is going to take you a few turns,
Oh, yeah.
Most likely 2.
Yeah.
And then, the daunting task kind of hits you that the Commandos have the same amount of health, and you have to pretty much commit, one either really great turn or ideally just 2 turns to kill each one. So that's putting you at 6 rounds to effectively kill this character pairing. And I think that that's what makes it such a daunting task for opponents. Now, what is kind of like your favorite thing as far as the characters go? I already kind of explained the Commandos and their power action, but where does the damage output really come from?
So the damage output is going to come from just the fact. Well, see, there's a few things really. So if you're lucky enough to get the whole Mother Talzin activation, to where you can actually reveal an odd number from your deck and then turn her die or the Mandalorian dies to the 2s, which are great. That's awesome. But where a lot of this damage springs from is the bouncing of equipments, okay? And the bouncing of the attachments that you're putting on the Mandalorians, okay? Whether that's a weapon or an equipment. That's where it comes from. And the nice thing about it is you can bounce chance cubes. So you can put a power action chance cube onto a Mandalorian, activate, decide that you're not going to pay the resource, so it bounces back to your hand, then use the power action to play it again on the Mandalorian, on the other Mandalorian, let's say. And the nice thing about it is you don't have to do that before you roll out. You can always do that later, okay? Or you can use these Sith holocrons that we all love so much, and you can play that on this character, so when they activate out, you can potentially hit the focus side, okay? Or the special, obviously. But the resource, the focus, the special, those are all great things. And then you can use the activation of Mother Talzin after you roll out this character to use her ability to manipulate the damage. But I have consistently done 6 damage. I mean, it's pretty easy to do 6 damage on top of the additional 2 you're doing with the power action. So I mean, that's 8 damage, okay, that you can very easily do. And I'm talking round 1. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I mean, it's something that can be done. Now, when you get into round 2 and round 3, if you're fortunate enough to be able to get like the Relby out there, like one of the great combos I like doing, and me and Ray were giving a lot of thought to, was by using the chance cube. And let's say you play the chance cube on the Mandalorian, the first Mandalorian. You roll out the Mandalorian. That's 1 damage you do plus the die that's sitting out there. If you get a shield, great. Grab the shield first round, stack it up. You're almost. If you do not claim the battle, if you don't use your battlefield, you don't claim the battlefield when you win a roll off, you're immediately grabbing 2 shields by using your opponents. So that almost puts you at 30 health. You grab another shield from one of the Mandalorian die, gives you another point of health. Okay, that technically shields are going to mitigate damage in a sense, because they have to use up that 1 damage to take away that shield. So 30 points, 30 health is huge. Okay, now you're using that power action to do the 1 damage. activate the Mandalorian, grab a shield, whatever, doesn't matter. Now you're bouncing the chance cube back to your hand, playing on the other Mandalorian. Okay, no big deal. Roll him out, bounce it back to your hand. Now you play the chance cube on Mother Talzin. Now you activate Mother Talzin, use her ability to try to get those 3 resources. So you can play that Relby on your next round, or even on that same round that you're in currently. First round,
Yeah.
Relby. I mean, dude, that's huge. Next turn, you roll out Relby attached to any of your characters, and you happen to hit that +3 modified, and you use your starting 2 resources to do 3 damage per character. I mean, that's great if you're going against a 3-wide mill setting or a 3-wide vehicle setting. Okay, that's what helps deliver that damage. 9 damage for 2 resources on round 2, not including the 2 that you get on the power actions for each Mandalorian, plus the die manipulation off of Talzin. I mean, dude, that's some serious damage. Now,
yeah, the Relby kind of like becomes like a pseudo force wave,
right,
when it hits that 3 side, because when you read the card, it doesn't say resolve the die, it just says remove it. So that's where you can utilize that 3 modified side and deal 3 damage. I mean, that's a better force wave that is essentially like a thermal detonator that you don't have to discard.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So there's just a lot of value, and then it does have the 2 base range sides. So you can easily pair that up with the ranged sides in your
exactly. And people get scared
so.
of it, man. They'll mitigate it, and that's fine. But the thing about it is that there's consistency, and if you're gonna hit, like on the Mandalorians, right? If you're gonna hit the melee, do it. You hit the range, do it. You hit the shields, do it. I mean, all those things are what you want. More health on top of a big health deck. Damage on another name for this deck is paper cuts. And more of this tiny little damage that you can stack throughout your round. I mean, they pair so well. So I mean, as far as talk about the damage, I can consistently get 6 damage out with mitigation in play, with depending on what I'm rolling for the dice. But I tell you what, man, Mother Talzin, she loves to roll damage, for me anyway. Like, I mean, I'll get those double 2s, and that's 4 damage sitting right there. Yes, some things can get easy picking. I mean, that's always going to be everyone's threat, and that's fine. Let them use it. Let them waste it. This is a deck that you slow play. This is a deck that lasts because of health. So let them use it up. You know what I'm saying? But there's a lot of things you can do. So I mean, this deck is very complex, and there's a lot of different builds. Okay, the particular build that I'm using is using things like armor plating and witch magic to try to keep yourself alive as much as you can. Using backup muscle to get past some of those shields, which I'm telling you right now, backup muscle comes in clutch all the time. That is what finishes games. Yep. This character pairing has a little bit of a hard time playing against, like say, Ayla and Luke. I was playtesting with a friend, Nick, and the problem is if he was to play every situation knowing how this deck runs, it's really hard to get through those shields. So backup muscle is really key. Things like flank is just awesome with this deck because of the 3 character. We already talked about Witch Magic, which you can consistently hit that. I've had Witch Magic backfire a couple times because of the 0 cost placements here. Because for the 0 cost, you're running you're running Chance Cube, okay, and then you're also running the Sith Holocron, okay, and then you're running the Hidden Motives, okay. Those things, the 6 cards that you have there sometimes can backfire. But I mean, here's the thing: even if you're getting 2 health. Okay, that's a lot because you're already at a big health deck pool already. So I mean, anything I can get, I take. Any shields I can get, I take, because really I'm just trying to further myself for that 2nd and 3rd round. That's where you start delivering like 10 and 12 damage, and 10 and 12 damage is a character just about. So I mean, majority of the characters we're playing against. So really by 3rd or 4th round, I mean, it's either I've won the game or I'm so far ahead that there's no way they're going to be able to bounce back.
Yeah. That's something I noticed, because I will say that, I'm very proud of Ashton and his run with the deck. And this was definitely, I will say probably the first deck that we, officially put through a gauntlet, like a Jackalmen Games gauntlet. And, night after night, we made sure that, we matched up against vehicles, and we put it up against, certain mill matchups, and we really threw as much as we could at it. So why don't you talk about some of the cards that you added in to kind of tech against the vehicles matchup, because through playtesting we kind of identified that the weaker matchup with this deck was vehicles, just because they were able to kind of sustain with either a wide array of characters, maybe they're 3 wide or 4 wide, that they don't really care about their characters so much as they do ramping and then hitting your characters in the face for heavy amounts of damage. Whether that be heroes, where you could say that the vehicles kind of come out a little bit faster because there's a lot of great 2-cost vehicles, or against a villain vehicles deck, which gets out vehicles a little bit slower at times, but the vehicles tend to hit a lot harder, or supports something like planetary bombardment. So tell me about some of the cards that you added in to kind of smooth out that matchup.
So as we're playtesting, let's say versus villain vehicles specifically here, the big thing is they have a lot of big beefy die. So the problem is your planetary bombardment. Obviously we know that can be a problem. One of the things that I teched in expecting to see vehicles at my locals was this card By Any Means. Okay, it's a 1-cost, so it helps with Witch Magic. It helps with Rift Valley, which is the battlefield for those that are listening to this. Rift Valley is the Dothamire area where it talks about reveal the top card of your deck. If that card's cost is an odd number, remove a die of a value of 2 or less. That helps with the mitigation if I happen to claim, but most of the time it's to kind of let my opponent get, because a lot of times they may win the roll off, and then I get those shields, and a lot of times they can't do much with it. There's some rare times that they'll be able to do something with it, but a lot of times it benefits me more if I have it, not so much them, depending on the roll off. But one of the techs that I have here is By Any Means. So the great thing about that is that if I happen to see some big side damage on a die that's 2 or higher, which is you're going to see a lot of. It's very relevant in this game. You're going to see a lot of vehicle die that's going to be doing, 4, 6, whatever those sides are going to be showing. And the problem is the mitigation that I have between like Electroshock and Feel Your Anger is kind of situational. Flank I only have 2 of, so I can only do so much with that. But Hidden Motive, Overconfidence, the removal that I have can't really interact with that much. So the nice thing about By Any Means is that it will actually remove that die. Okay, you don't have to spot anything, and then does 1 indirect. Okay, and 1 indirect is not much here, especially when you're shutting down a die that's going to do like 6 damage to you. So that's one of the techs. Another tech in here is Force Throw. So Force Throw is nice because I can actually remove a die to deal a character damage equal to that value. So if I'm looking at these big beefy indirect sides that are getting rolled out on these vehicles, that's direct damage for me. Now, granted, you have to hit the special to do it, and that's where you have to play this. You have to play this character pairing really based on your opponent, and that's one of the things that you'll hear from one of the videos where me and Andrew were playing in the final match. I'll see if I can link it here in this video when we put it out. But you'll even hear Andrew saying that it's not an easy deck to pilot. It's not. A lot of things with this deck is very situational. It's a lot of cards put together that interact with a lot of certain situations. So Force Throw is really great when you're playing against those big hitter decks. Okay, you can literally throw the +3 modified off of Ancient at a character. You can shut down a base side and then use that +3, in your advantage against your opponent. You can use it for a planetary bombardment and knock out a character 1 shot. I mean, you can do some great things with it, but again, it's all in the placement. It's all in the timing. You might have to mulligan hard for it. You might have to make sure you play it on a certain Mandalorian that's not being picked on, so that way you can use Mother's ability to do it. You have to do it at the right time. That's the scary part. You want to kind of get it out early, have them force, have your opponent use that mitigation forcefully on that special, okay, to kind of save you from losing out on your big damage sides. But that Force Throw is kind of something that I teched in for it.
There's nothing like scarier than if you're piloting a vehicles deck and then someone resolves all of their dice because you're a vehicles deck and you want to move slow, but they have that 1 Force Throw special just kind of sitting out there, and you have nothing in your hand to deal with that. Mm-hmm. So it makes it really tough. You almost don't want to roll, your highest sides, because that they're just going to throw it right in your face. Force Throw it's been around since Awakenings. It's amazing. just having the ability to not only deal that damage, but the dice is going to get removed. I think it's just super strong. I really like that you added that. I want to just go down your upgrades real quick because we do have those who listen to us through podcasts. So I just want to make sure that they're aware. So he is running 14 total upgrades.
Yes.
Now, we have seen lists that go all the way up to 16 upgrades.
Yeah.
This one is a little bit more stripped down and kind of bare bones. We have 2 armored platings, 2 chance cubes, 2 force push, 2 force throw, 2 Mandalorian van braces, 2 Relby V10 mortar guns, and 2 Sith holocrons. So I kind of know the reason why, but I want to get your take and kind of let the audience know what was your rationale about not adding, the 2 more upgrades and maybe being, Force Illusion to keep your characters alive a little bit more.
So Force Illusion. So the thing about it is I want every card that's in this deck. I would rather search for that witch magic than to lose the witch magic or lose the blue ability upgrade or lose a holocron or lose a chance cube or something of that sort. It's like, yeah, it can mitigate a bunch of modified damage, but I have a lot of health. I have a lot of way of healing that off my characters, and I have ways of resolving shields off my character die using armor plating. These are things that exist to keep this deck healthy, and I feel like Force Illusion was just like that one card that just kept backfiring on me. I'm like, dang it, man, they just want my chance cube, they just want my witch magic, so I found myself using a Force Illusion to pop off 3 damage when I could essentially heal to 3 damage and not lose any cards.
Right.
So I just felt like it kept backfiring on me on this deck, because one of the things is about this deck, and one of the reasons why it's stripped down is because every card's very important. So like I need that specific type of mitigation, and the things that we deal with as far as like the electroshocks where they spot, my yellow character is going to last obviously longer than Talzin. Everyone's character that they're going to target first is going to be Mother Talzin, because she's the one that's changing die, when the real threat is the Mandalorian. I mean, that's where it comes from. And those van bracers are the secret weapon. Like, I'm surprised how many people I played against that were like, oh, that's a neat little trick. Oh, that's a neat little trick. Like, literally, to win a game, I played on van bracers, played van bracers on Commando, right? Rolled out, resolved the die for a shield, okay? Then I just use the action, put it back to my hand. And I'm slow playing. So I'm like, I'm doing all these things in between their actions to get them to play out. The next turn, I use the other resource I have to play it on the other Mandalorian as power action. Do 1 damage, roll out. Right? And then for a game, I literally bounce out the action ability back to my hand, discard a reroll for like the last 2 damage I needed. I mean, it's like that sneaky card that you can use to discard to reroll. You can use it to bounce. You can still play it on Mother. I mean, you can still use it like against Mill. So like you can still bounce it back to your hand. So you draw less cards out of your deck to keep as much as you can in your deck to keep yourself from decking out. Same thing for Chance Cube. Like I bounced a Chance Cube back. I had 3 cards left in my deck. Well, I obviously used all the cards in my hand. I was going to draw what was the option? I had 2 cards in my hand and I had 3 cards left in my deck. And so what I did is I obviously bounced back the Chance Cube, bounced back to Van Braces, so I didn't have to draw as many cards from my deck, right? So I had to draw 1. Because I had 3 already in my hand, and that kept me from decking out so quickly. And obviously I knew what those cards were sitting in the deck by that time. I mean, you can very easily just search your discard, and everything's evenly paired out. So there's like neat little tricks like that. It works great against Mill. It does decent against vehicles. It gets around shields pretty quickly. Its biggest villain right now is Obi Maz. I mean, that deck is tough for it. I should have played a lot different than I did on stream. I didn't play test against it. That's the funny thing. I'm like,
yeah, to be fair, like I will say, like I was saying before, like we put this deck through its paces in the gauntlet, and I will say, like Obi Maz, I don't think we got 1 rep with that.
Yeah, and I've played Obi Maz for a long time. Like that was my deck. Like I love that deck, and to this day, it's still one of my favorite decks. Just like Vader Raider, like that's a great deck, and a lot of people love that deck. And Obi Maz is kind of like that deck for me. But the thing about it is I know how it played, and I know how the deck plays, and I know what to anticipate, but I didn't know how to play this character pairing against it. I'm like,
right.
Who do I really go after? Do I go after Maz first and shut down their chaining and their manipulation of the dice and their speed, or do I go after Obi and try to shut him down and then deal with Maz, the little bit of health she has left at the end? Like, who do I dwindle down first? And the both times that I lost were against Obi Maz at my store championship. And I was going after Obi because he was really doing the most, and I could kill Obi, okay, and get close to killing him when I played against Andrew, but it's just, it wasn't enough. Like, it's just, they got me down to one super commando, and when I'm down to one super commando, it plays too slow for me to do anything, because they're only going to stack up 2 die. Like, everything I'm doing is big hits out of just little dice saturation, and then, you know, the rest is all removal and tricks, you know?
Yeah. The reason I think that's probably such a tough matchup is because when you're using the power action and you're kind of, everyone's calling this, like you said, tacos or paper cuts. When you're doing those little stabs at a character, your opponent immediately knows who you're committing to.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's no instance where you're just going to burst out a bunch of damage. You might hit 4s here and there, between your character dice or like you were saying, Mother Talzin, but you really are committing to a character. And even I think it was a smart decision in that instance to go after Obi first,
Mm-hmm.
because, Maz, where Maz is certainly the engine, I think that you would have probably been too slow,
Mm-hmm.
chewing through that 8 health to then work on a fully loaded Obi.
Yeah. Right.
And then the other kind of, handicap I'll put on that, or the reason it is so tough is because with Obi-Wan always activating and giving, whatever character he'd like a shield.
That's what makes it so tough for this deck.
Yeah, that turns off, one of the super commandos'
and negates
ability
my
for the
power
turn.
action. Yep. It's just like, what's the point? Like, I can do this 1 damage. And see, that's the thing. Like, so when I was playing, little things like that would happen, and I just have to realize that don't get discouraged by that, okay? Because they could very easily forget the shield activation. Like, Andrew Cox is a great player, but he literally wrote shields on his hand in huge letters because he kept forgetting. It's like, it happens. Like, it's not about being a great player. It's about putting those reps in and then not thinking so far ahead that you forget about what you're doing now. And that's why, like, talking about this deck is kind of hard for me, because, like, I'm thinking of all these scenarios, and a lot of it depends on what your opponent's doing. Like, this deck, the thing I feel about this deck is it has combos, but it's all situational. Like, this deck here is like getting your reps in to know how your player plays and how the deck plays out that you're going against, and then you having all the answers against it. And a lot of it's all situational, like shooting by the hip in a sense. Like, hey, now's the time I play this chance cube and I keep it on the field. Now's the time I keep it and maybe discard it. Now's the time I keep it in my hand and I just keep bouncing it. That all depends. It's not the same reps every single time. That's why I love this deck. That's why it's so much fun. It's because it's not doing the same thing every time. It has its groove, right? It has its motions, but a lot of things change. I may not keep my backup muscle. I may discard it. I may put it back. I may not keep it in my starting hand. And then if I'm playing against, a 2-character pairing, I'm absolutely keeping it, because if I can get that second one out there, that's 2 damage per round. Now, granted, I have to, get that to happen, but it's one of those things where I'm playing out my hand almost every single round. So I'm going through cards fast. And I'm grabbing resources when I can get them, I'm grabbing shields when I can get them. It's a very interesting deck. And this build's very interesting. It's not like loaded with a bunch of ranged weapons. It's not loaded with a bunch of things to generate money outside of what your dice can do. It's the holocron build, okay, with shields is what it is. And then the rest is all done by the power actions. But man, I tell you what, I've been able to get 8 damage out of these characters, no problem, because you're late playing and you force them to use their mitigation on specials, and you force them to use their mitigation on your blue upgrades, or your chance queue focus side, and it's like, man, it's just it does a lot of damage, and it's really fun, and people get annoyed by it really quick.
Yeah, I know when I was, playtesting against it with you, a lot of the times when you first are playing against this deck, you initially disregard the Super Commando's power action, and you just think, okay, he did 1 damage over here. Okay, he did another damage. And even if you have like an 11 health character, you're still feeling okay. But then it's once his characters start rolling out, and they already did 2 damage to him, and now he's showing 4, and you're feeling like you're in a really bad spot, because that's going to be 6 damage that turn, and that can easily happen in turn 1. So that's the nice thing. There's little to no ramp in this deck. Like, it doesn't need to ramp to be efficient, and that's something that I really like about it. I like that you can rely on, you know, the health pool that you have. There's, like Ashton was saying, there's just so much to the deck that it kind of interacts with a lot of other you know, decks in the meta. I like to look at this as like a culmination of what the Way of the Force meta has kind of brought to us. You know, it's 3 wide. It's got blue. Every
and it's a
every
budget
good
build.
deck has blue.
There's not a single legendary.
It really is.
There's not a single legendary. You know, it's just filled with a bunch of rares. It's a budget build. It's a deck that is tricky to pilot, but always fun, always different every time you play it. I mean, it is an answer. It's a way that, like, if someone wants to get into this game and they want to have a competitive deck that has an answer to a lot of the other meta decks, this is your answer, really. Because it helps you explore cards. Another tech that I put in was Frighten. Frighten's great because we're seeing a lot of shields, so obviously I can get rid of those shields and then finish them off with the dice that's sitting in the pool. But, you know, you're dealing 6 damage over 3 rounds guaranteed without any mitigation because of the power actions. Okay, and I've never played a game. I haven't played a game so far where I've lost both Mandalorians by round 3. So
yeah,
that's,
like I said,
6 damage.
It's a tall order.
Yeah, plus the backup muscle if you get it. Right?
Yep.
So that's 8 damage, or that's 9 damage that you're doing, okay, which is basically a character, just by round 3 without resolving your dice.
Yeah, it's really strong.
So it's cool.
Let me finish off explaining the rest of the deck. So we went through the 14 upgrades. He's got 2 supports in here, which is backup muscle. So we've kind of touched on that in how that's, you know, works against shields. And then like Ashton was just saying, you know, that's 3 rounds of 3 pings between the Commandos and the backup muscle. But the events, so you have 14 events. You have the 2 by any means. 2 electroshocks, 1 feel your anger, 2 flanks, 1 frighten, 2 hidden motives, 2 overconfidence, and 2 witch magic to round out the events package. So during your store championship and during your run, what do you think was kind of the go-to, the solid mitigation that you can always rely on, or that you were looking forward to drawing into? And then what's one that kind of surprised you?
So flank was like, yes, flank's in my hand, beautiful. Okay, because the nice thing about flank is it's gray, and if I'm going against Kylo, no one's gonna be calling gray. Okay, it's also the fact that if I have more ready characters than opponent, I may remove one of that opponent's dice. That's not a character die. That's not an upgrade die. That's not a 2 or more, 2 or less. It's a die. I love cards that are just simple like that. It's cheap. I can pay for it. That's the card that I love to have. Feel Your Anger. I'd had 2 and I dropped it down to 1, and I'm happy with the 1 because I substituted the second Feel Your Anger for the Frighten, and that was a great decision. That was actually Ray just trying to talk to me more about it and be like, look, you know, you really got to think about these shields. 2's not necessary, but 1 Frighten's nice. And I have to say that I didn't play a lot of Frighten, but I can tell you that in certain situations where I would have needed it, I could have also had it too. So it was one of those things where it's like, it was there if I needed it. Again, this deck has to have answers. So it was like, I have the answer in my hand. And believe it or not, Frighten was the replacement for the second Feel Your Anger, and running 1 Feel Your Anger was something that was just very surprising to me, because that one time I drew it is every time I needed it. Like if I had 2, I would have thrown it away, right? But the fact that I had 1, it allowed me to draw it so much later in the game, to where that's where multiple dice were sitting out, so it was more impactful. Like a Feel Your Anger is great for a 1-cost removal for 1 die, right? But a Feel Your Anger is, you know, essentially what the title is to your opponent when you remove 4 dice or 3 dice.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, you don't get to that stage in the game unless you're playing against, like, you know, Plo Koon Padawan, or, you know, something like that early game. Most of the time you're going to get that dice saturation by your round 3 or round 4. And usually by round 3, round 4, that's when you're going to see your heavy damage and your heavy mitigation. And when I had Feel Your Anger and I drew into it, it was great. So, I mean, the card that surprised me is Feel Your Anger, and the card that I love to have is Flank. And by any means, so I had that in there, and I understand its importance and I see its power, but I didn't get to experience it much in real life play at the store championship. Mostly I saw all of its benefits in TTS. So as far as store championship, like I didn't really get to experience that much. Every time I seemed to get by any means was much later in the game, just by the draws. And it wouldn't have really mattered because the characters I was playing against, just I didn't get to see a lot of vehicles, even though I was ready for it, like I was prepared for it. I didn't get to see any of it. So that card was kind of whatever.
That's all you can expect. Like,
yeah.
you want to prepare for the worst kind of, your worst matchup, and then kind of just adjust from there. So yeah, I thought I kept trying to get you off by any means, but once I saw how effective it was against the vehicle decks, it did seem to just have to be kind of an auto include for in my opinion. And I'm kind of glad that you brought me up to speed with that card.
People really did appreciate it. Like, oh, that's a nice tech. That's a good idea to have that in the deck. And it's kind of one of those cards that I think we'll see it more. It was in our top mitigation Let's Talk that we did. It was kind of at the end, like the honorable mentions. And we'll see what it does. We'll see if it rises up, like Pacify and things of that sort. It was a lot of fun. I enjoy seeing the same crew over and over again. There was one misplay that like I just really just wanted to just walk out with because I had to feel I had to feel your anger in my hand with like 3 blank dice showing out against Kylo Snoke, and I didn't resolve it. I was so focused on like trying to bounce my upgrades and do all these things because there's a lot of things going on in your mind with this deck, and I just didn't play the simple play, and that's where I'm like, okay, dang it, man. And I ended up losing that. But we played the second round, and I plowed through it so quickly. The opponent I was playing against just like, hey, you got it. Just go ahead and jump to the next one. Because now that you know how my deck works, the second round, the third round is just going to be the same. Because element of surprise was a little gone. So, and the neat thing about it is I didn't see anyone else playing this deck. I saw one guy playing Snoke. It was Snoke, Commando, and the Executioner. But that was it. That's the only thing I saw. That was like Mando. Oh, and a Vader Super Commando. That was the second deck I saw with a Commando. But other than that, I didn't see anything else played there. So it's I don't know. I guess people just know about it and don't feel like they want to play it, or maybe they just haven't had time to put the reps in it. But I mean, it's super strong. It's going to be out there for a while. I guarantee it.
Yeah, I think that, like I was saying, I think it just matches up so well with so many things. Like we keep saying, we kind of identified that vehicles is a little bit of a tough matchup for it. But other than that, I mean, it has a fair shot against any other deck. It rips apart 2-character decks.
Yeah,
like
2 character. When I sit across 2 characters, I'm like, okay, great, no problem. This is easy. If I play it right, I got this.
Right, and especially like the 2-character decks that have the Snokes in there. So like a Snoke Cad Bane or a Snoke Kylo. I mean, they ideally want a power action as much as possible to really push out that damage. But the thing about it is they're not going to be able to kill one of your characters. They'd have to power action twice, and still they'd fall short of killing a character unless it's hot rolls on some of the upgrades.
Right.
And it doesn't feel good to kind of assist the super commandos in pinging your own character. So that's where I feel like that's a really tough decision to want to power action your strong powerful character like Cad or Kylo when you're up against this pairing.
Snoke's good, but I think Snoke's just really going to be prominent in the vehicles. I think that's where he really belongs. Essentially just kind of like how Yoda does really well with the vehicles as well, and always has. Right. But it's one of the decks that I was kind of a little scared to sit across was actually my first round, which was against Rex Clone Trooper, and that's the Elite Rex, not running the long-term plan version. And because that deck's fast, that deck was running Wingman and training and hit and run and all the great blasters that it can do, Rex's blaster, and anyway, that was dealing a lot of damage really fast. But again, the 14 upgrades that I'm running are all a sense of mitigation. So, because I count Witch's Magic as mitigation. Anything that heals, I count as mitigation because that mitigated 3 damage, right? So,
right.
14 mitigation cards sitting out there just felt nice. And then when you're looking at things like the 2 disrupts that you can get off of like force throw and things like that, you're just shutting down stuff like that for the second round. But I ended up winning. He had some kind of bad rolls, but again, he was discarding to reroll. It wasn't like he just got stuck with the blanks, like he tried to resolve them. He was able to sneak some damage through, but this damage is kind of just doing a lot more. So, I mean, that was kind of a little scary. I went against Mill. I did really well against Mill. What was another scary pairing I went against? I mean, obviously, Obi-Maz. Like, Obi-Maz, I was kind of sitting across that deck, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be easy. Like, I know how I can get around this, because I know how the deck plays. And then, like, as I was playing against it, I'm like, this is just too slow. It's too slow. Like, I'm doing damage, he's gaining shields. I'm doing damage, he's like shields on, shields off, shields on, shields off. And then as he's, mitigating some of the dice that I have, the only reason why I was able to do a dent is because of the power actions and be able to sneak stuff through later. But I mean, that was scary. And then Kylo Snoke round 2, I was able to kind of play around it a little differently, and I got, I've play tested against it, so I was able to get around that pretty quick. Just keep targeting Kylo, because Snoke, once you shut down Snoke's partner, Snoke loses his Snoke. You know what I mean? He can't do nothing. He can't Snoke himself. You know what I'm saying? So, you shut down his pairing character, whatever the situation is, and then he becomes a little bit less scary. But yeah, I mean, it was a great experience. It was like 8-9 hours of Destiny, and what the cool thing is that it's nice that I placed a little higher ranking, because I actually took this serious. Like, normally, like, I'll build a deck like 20-30 minutes before. Like, a lot of people probably know that I'll put something together in the hotel room and play it, or I'll play something the night before and I'll play it. This time I was like, you know what, this is a deck that I really enjoy. I want to try to be a little bit more competitive. I got a new Jackalmen game t-shirt, so I wanted to make sure that, when people saw that, I was repping hard, So I was like, I gotta get in that photo op with this new t-shirt. So that was my motivation. And then I
like
fun.
it that, I feel like you were saying, you progressed and you came in second, and only losing to the North American Championship or champion. That's, it's a tough feat to beat a player like him. And I think that, watching you put in the days and days of practicing and really taking things a little bit more serious and tuning your deck instead of, building it on the fly, I think it certainly showed in that run. He was keeping us, updated all along the way, and it was really exciting even on, my end and Kevin's end. Just, hey, round 2, win. Round 3, win. Like, he just kept going, and it was win after win. And I was like, oh, you might be able to do this. And he let us know that there was no other tacos in the field.
Right.
So I was feeling really good about that. But yeah, we're certainly proud of you here at Jackalmen Games. Our boys learning and getting good.
I'm trying. So now next is Nova coming up here now, right? I guess that's the next big thing.
Yeah. Yep. So we have a lot of friends going to Nova.
Yep.
Unfortunately, we are not going to be attending.
Nope.
It does. I will say, being a content creator and being really plugged into the game, man, there's a lot of travel that some of these people can really commit to.
That's true.
I don't know.
But
we'll get
what?
there.
This is the game that I've actually started traveling for, though. Like, when I play Magic and other card games, it's like I never wanted to travel as much, and like, this is fun. And the cool thing is like, you get to travel and meet the same people. It's like, like the same kind of family. So it's like that helps, because like in competitive formats of anything, you always have like those competitive jitters. So it's really nice whenever you go into play a competitive game in a competitive scene, you get to meet familiar people. So it's like, okay, cool. There's no more edge. There's no more nervous butterflies. It's like, okay, now you can focus on their game, because it's different. Sitting at your computer playing TTS or sitting around with your friends, playing Destiny is different than playing against strangers that are treating it really serious. That throws you off your game all on its own. Forget putting reps in, forget, percentages and odds and probabilities and all these sorts of things. You just got to just focus and not just make stupid play mistakes. Like, literally, I was playing against Andrew Cox, and I was forgetting to like pay my resource or bounce chance cube back to my hand. And I'm like, how many times I've bounced that thing back to my hand or paid the resource, but just a simple, like, intimidation of like, man, I got to make sure I play right, you know, and then you got a camera over top of you and you're like, man, I got to make sure that like whatever I do right, because people are going to comment on this later. You know what I mean? So it's,
streaming's tough. Like I've been on stream once at a regional. You know, I went like I was going 4-0 and they're like, hey, you got to sit up at the top table. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then they had the stream like hanging from above. And I just remember like I was sweating bullets, like, and I was trying to make sure I was definitely playing a lot slower. And I was trying to make sure everything was, you know, I wasn't making any mistakes. And then I kind of like, I had a moment where like I was looking at my cards, like looking at my hand, and I thought to myself, I'm thinking about not making mistakes and I'm going to make a mistake. And then I just played. I ended up winning, and hopefully I never got to watch the stream, but hopefully it was good.
My favorite moment when I was playing against Andrew is he has Maz loaded up and he has OB loaded up, and he's got all of he has 4-speed sitting out there, and he's got I guess I could talk about this deck because they already posted it out, but he had Dagger Mortis out there, and he had what else was sitting on the field? Maz's die, Obi's die. Like, he was loaded up, and he's sitting thinking, and I'm looking at my cards, I'm doing the whole nervous card twitch, and then I put the cards down on the table, and then he like does this whole thing where he puts both of his elbows on the table and he puts his hand on top of his head, and he's like thinking like really hard. I'm like, oh man, I must be thinking too. Like, let me think about what I want to do. And I'm like, I'm not thinking hard enough. I got to think now. And like, it was so funny because every time he was thinking, I'm like, okay, now I got to pretend to think. You know, like I can't. Like, what am I missing? Why is he thinking that this is so important? What am I not seeing? And it was just funny, like little stupid things like that, just playing in competitive settings with a bunch of people. But, you know, again, about the game, you know, it's fun because that fear or that nervousness goes away when you get to play Destiny with your family. You know, it's like people you know and see and interact with, and that's just why I love this game. It's just a very welcoming atmosphere. So,
well, one thing that I noticed, and I mean, you've told me this before about playing with, you know, Andrew. I do think that there's like a rare breed of players, and Andrew fits into this category. I even witnessed Paul from Arrowbrook Gaming. They're very competitive guys and they're good players. But when you watch them or when you play against them, it's like a fine line of like a competitive / relaxed atmosphere. And I feel like that takes a certain, not only player, but type of person to like establish that environment. And even like when you were playing against Andrew in the finals, you know, there was a point where he had claimed really early, and you just kind of played out your hand. And I remember you played like a backup muscle, and then you resolved your Sith Holocron, and you played, I think it was like a force push or force throw, and you played like one other thing, and he was like, wow, that was a really good hand, man. And you guys kind of like just quick laughed about it. You're like, oh, I know, it really was.
Because the thing about this is like, I got my hand, I drew my cards, and I'm like, man, I think I'm going to keep this. And I'm like, I feel like I have to get rid of cards or I don't know what I'm doing. It's like, he's like, what do you mean you keep your starting hand? You can't keep your starting hand. Like, if you're a good player, you know you got to get rid of something. So like, I feel like I'm obligated to like pretend I know what I'm doing by getting rid of cards. And I'm like, I'm going to keep this hand. So he did. Yeah, that was where he played through everything. And then I played the rest of my hand. He's like, man, that was a really good hand. Now I see why you kept that. And that's what this deck does. Like, you play after your opponent's done. Is what you try to go for. That's where the bouncing comes in, because that takes an action. Power action takes an action. You know, activating takes an action. So, you know, you're taking like 10 actions, 12 actions a turn, you know, so.
That's what, like I was saying, like when I watched players like Paul from Arrowbrook, I watched him in a finals match against another guy local from New Jersey by the name of Frenchie. And, you know, Frenchie seemed like he was having a hard time because he was a little up against it. But Paul the whole time was like joking and telling him, hey, no, it's cool. It's cool. And, you know, I just think those type of players are like interacting with them. It's what makes the game fun. And it's what makes like, you know, you're going to be more compelled to go and try to sit at those top tables and be playing with those players because they're fun and inviting guys. And like you were saying, like I travel now and I meet up with people that I haven't seen in a couple months, or I saw them during regional season. So yeah, Destiny has truly become like a small family. But I think we got extremely off topic. But Tacos, what are some closing thoughts on why you think this deck is viable in the current meta?
So health, okay.
Yep. Check.
It slow plays, okay, and I think that's important. It does consistent damage. It doesn't rely on discarding to reroll because each card is very important. Okay, that ties in with the consistency. And it has things as far as a range of abilities. So you can shield, you can do damage, you can disrupt, you can discard. Okay, discards are always good. Like there's no greater feeling in the world than discarding their ancient, or discarding, their witch magic if they're running one, or their hyperspace jump. That's,
I was going to say hyperspace.
Andrew, shout out to you. So it's one of those things where that it has the ability to be able to discard. I mean, that's great. Those are some things that are really an answer to the metas. It can get cards out of your hand. It can mitigate dice. It has a lot of health. It late plays out, and it can deal damage. It has all the answers of what you need. And that's kind of what I like about this deck, is it all around is solid. And it doesn't struggle against much. Like, if people listen to our Let's Talk on how to win with Andrew Cox, that's one of the things that he talks about, is if the deck should either plow through it, okay, or if it doesn't, get rid of it. Go to find a new deck, because it should be able to plow through a majority of the top meta decks. If not, either try to tech out a few cards to do it, or just stop wasting your time on it. And this is one of those decks that can really plow through a lot of the decks, because you're seeing a lot of 2-character pairings out. And then where you get into the 3-character pairings, like vehicles and mill, that's where you have the answers with some of the choices that we have listed here. So that's why I think it will do good in this current meta. And I mean, in the next set coming out, what is it, Cross the Galaxy, right?
Yeah, I haven't even wrapped my head around another set.
This deck won't be able to do much with some of the stuff that we've been revealed, or have with some of the stuff they've revealed already. It's not going to be able to deal a lot with some of that stuff, but in this current meta, it will. But the upcoming meta, I mean, there's still a lot of cards we don't know, but
yeah, who knows? Though?
Yeah, it's going to probably fizzle out there, but you never know. Obi Maz is still here.
Right.
And that's a deck that I thought would come and go and be gone, but now it's still here. So
yeah. So you're not a guest on the show, but something I commonly ask, like anytime we have guests on and we're doing interviews, is if you're playing against this deck, if I'm somebody sitting down and my opponent rolls out Taco and they're playing this deck, as the opponent, who do you think I should target first, and that would give me the greatest success to beating a deck like this? So, because we've heard why it's a good deck and why it's great.
Right.
And now I want to hear,
where's its weak points.
Its weak points?
Don't let this deck get shields. Keep it from gaining health. Okay. If they're playing Rift Valley, doesn't matter. They're not going to use it, because they're going to late play. You're going to claim way before they are, and Rift Valley is going to work against you if you're running some of those 3-character weapons, especially if like Blue Hero. Blue Hero helps because they're running Overconfidence, they're running Heirloom, they're running Ancient, they're running things that they can trigger off of, right? They're running Forest Solutions. So if that's the case, use Rift Valley, because it's going to work for you for Blue Hero. And then go after Talzin. Absolutely go after Talzin. And resolve as much damage as you can as quickly as you can. Do not spread your damage against this deck. Focus on one character at a time. I see people try to spread their damage out because a certain character has shields or whatever, or a certain character has armor plating. Get armor plating off as fast as you can. But most importantly, focus on Mother Talzin and don't let this deck get shields. And I think that will give you a little bit of the leverage.
Okay. I think that about wraps it up. I don't know what our time's at, but I feel like we really talked pretty extensively.
Yeah, it's something we've been kind of keeping in our heads for a while, and now we can finally put this out,
Yeah, I'm glad we got it out, and I'm glad that you had a decent run at a store championship. The only person that was standing in your way was the North American champion. So I think that we're all in the common camp of it's a tough guy to play against. I mean, it is what it is.
Yep.
But if you guys like this type of information, if you guys are enjoying these Let's Talk, please let us know. And head over to what's kind of new at Jackalmen Games is our website. So, Ashton, you've been working hard on that. Tell them about it.
So on this website, it is a one-stop source of all the Jackalmen Games content. So there's a news feed that shows you what we're talking about on Twitter, what we're talking about on Facebook, what we're doing in YouTube. There's a recent video section right there, all on the homepage, along with the news that shows you the recent videos that are out. We now have products that we have for sale, like Jackalmen Games stickers and t-shirts. All of that is right there on the main page. So you go to jackalmengames.com, you scroll down, you got news, products for sale, recent videos, and of course, all the stuff that a lot of people love to look into, like articles. And now we have an articles section. We have a decks section that talks about what we think are the top meta decks, things to play against, a gauntlet essentially. And then there's things about us, a little bit of bios about us, little stuff on our Patreon page, and just some fun interactive things that you can do as far as being a member of the site. So definitely check out jackalmengames.com. It's going to be growing. Ray and myself are tweaking on it a little bit every day, really. And we love to get you guys' feedback, whether that's on Discord or whether it's on this video, or even replying or commenting on the articles that you can read on Jackalmen Games. And the neat thing about the articles that we offer is we have Headless Django, who writes articles on losing. Now, not losing as he doesn't ever win anymore, but his trials of going 0-23. And him building decks and experimenting on decks and what he learned through that process. So if you're new to the game and you're watching this video because you're trying to understand top meta decks, check out those articles by Headless Django. He will tell you the do's and don'ts and his struggles so you don't feel alone if you are in a losing streak. And you could also hear about his wins. And yeah, I think that about covers it.
Yeah, we have, like you were saying, we have articles that kind of I'm most excited about. We have, one store championship kind of run right up there, which is from
Fortune.
Fortune, yep. And yep, he took Cad Snoke, so that's up there. And then I'm going to force Ashton to do a write up on his run with Taco. We're going to have some articles about decks, so I'm really excited about what JackalmenGames.com is going to bring.
Yeah, I like it because not everyone goes to YouTube. Not everyone checks out stuff on Facebook. I mean, a lot of people do on Facebook, let's say that. But as far as like Twitter and things like that, they don't really get involved with that. And there's so many Discord channels out there that a lot of people are part of them, but you have to kind of weed through them. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of just everything, not what you're actually after. So the neat thing is Jackalmen Games kind of brings in a lot of those highlights and you can easily click on it and navigate what you want. So, yeah.
Yeah. All right, I think that about does it for me.
Yeah, I think we got it, man.
All right, take care, guys.
All right, guys, take it easy.
If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to head over to the Jackalmen Games Patreon page, where patrons receive exclusive content, as well as access to our Discord channel, where you can interact with Kevin, Ashton, and Ray on a daily basis. Any amount that you can provide is greatly appreciated, and we'll see you next time on Jackalmen Games.